It's Spoilerin time, folks. This is the show where we take all the hard work on our other show, Cordkillers, watch some shows, and then get to talk about them with you and get all spoilery because you guys have watched them too. Well, just to make sure, here's what we're going to talk about. Hannibal, Season 1, Episode 10. WandaVision, the 4th episode of Season 1. And The Stand, Season 1, Episode 7. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
Yeah, dude. Where are we starting?
We are going to start with The Stand, in which we go for a walk down a highway.
Yeah, kind of weird that the image on IMDb is the last frame of the entire episode. I suspect that Bryce liked this one more than
place your
ones.
bets. Place your bets.
Yeah. No, I think that this seems like a Bryce would like it more than other ones episode.
Tom?
I think he doesn't like it as much as maybe you would think, but in the end admits...
You're going to place your bet like $1 under whatever mine... $1 Tom over here. That's his bet. Whatever Brian sets the line at, he'll take the under.
Brian's putting his money on red. I'm putting my money on slightly darker red.
That's right. I'm putting it on brick.
We was it on Spoilerin Time last week where we talked about that this show feels... Even though this is CBS All Access / Paramount Plus, it feels kind of like a CBS show.
Yes.
Yeah. CBS show with a few more boobs and cursing, but
yes,
otherwise, yeah.
Although this episode, and before you give us the answer, holy cow, I just kept hearing Bryce's word. It's a melodrama. It's a melodrama. It's a melodrama. It's a melodrama. And it's like, at some point, I just like, every time I thought it, I thought, oh, yeah, it really is.
Soap operas have just gotten better looking, Brian.
Yeah.
This episode I felt really was really noticeable, the CBS stuff. Like I really noticed the cuts to commercial way more than in previous episodes. And I thought some of the interesting things happened, especially the end bit with
Nadine.
With Nadine, yeah, and her thing with Flag and the
all of a sudden she's pregnant
and
weird and
corpse bride.
Yeah. I thought that was a really good, interesting last minute twist because I was very prepared halfway through this episode to be like, okay, they're going off onto the walk. We're gonna watch them go off into the horizon and start next and cut to credits because that would have been so obvious, and then it thankfully wasn't.
Yeah. I wouldn't have minded some cool, I don't know, 2 to 3 minute talkie vignettes of just being on the road, like like the kind of thing. Maybe not even from the book or whatever, where it's like, you ever notice so and so? Like think Quentin Tarantino, Pulp Fiction.
They had really short versions of that, but it would have been cool to do some character building with them along the way.
Yeah,
and ultimately a toothless montage that I definitely just skipped.
It was all
through.
7 minutes long.
Well, you think just because I'm a Native American, I know where the water is? Well, you're right.
Yeah,
that was all we got.
Yeah,
as far as character.
What's that? Did they show a wolf on the horizon? Immediately cut to me, the Native American, for no reason.
Did it? Okay, you guys have read.
I'm an atheist.
You guys have the book. So, does this happen in the book that John Marsden breaks his leg in a pit? And then they just leave him to die there?
Stu
Redmond does.
I mean, obviously he doesn't die there because the dog came back and obviously he's going to go and save everybody next episode. But
I'm not going to answer that question. I will say that
does Stu fall? I actually can't remember exactly though. Does Stu fall in?
It's
or is it something different?
I can't remember if the way I remember picturing it as I read it is some version of like running the culvert on the side of a like basically the side of the road ditch.
Oh yeah,
that is.
Okay.
Like at some point there's a tumble and it's bad,
okay.
And everyone's like, well, they the prophecy definitely said one thing, and in the book, a little bit more distance between him being left to die on the side of the road and the dog showing up. If I were to disagree, I might disagree with the direction of like, oh yeah, let's let the tension simmer for 23 seconds. That's enough. Okay, bring the dog back. Everyone will figure it
Literally
out. Okay,
last
and
that
go.
dog at?
I'm with you, Bryce. That was too.
Because that whole the whole
You might not have noticed. I tend not to like to second guess those things because I'm like, well, you know what? They wanted to make a different choice, so they wanted to play it different. Maybe it didn't work for you. That's one where I'm like, no, you did it out of order, right? Like I just don't see how showing the dog that quick was a good choice, because the next scene is them going, where's the dog?
Before they get kidnapped.
If
you don't see the dog and the next scene is, where's that dog? Then you're left wondering, where's the dog? Not, well, he's back at the crevice. We just saw him.
And also just like pacing wise, like we spend a whole Lord of the Rings film of them making their way down the pit, and then the dog goes up, and then everybody goes up, and then at the last, it's CBS. It's a soap opera, and you have to accept some of the moments where they shot it in 30 frames per second. But
60 frames per second. Like a Telemundo.
24p, 30p. What do you got?
But I'm excited about the corpse bride thing, because that I don't know if that is if I can take that at face value, right? Of either she has been interfacing with a proxy for Flag, and he knows that she and Harold were unsuccessful and is retaliating. I don't quite know how deep to read into that, but I think it's interesting.
How did Harold's end of story read to you? Like
premature.
Just
almost.
Yeah.
It felt like they were going to set up anything else. I guess the only thing I could take away from it was like, I guess that's why Mother A made them walk, is so that they wouldn't find him too fast and try to save his life. But,
okay, I'm glad you brought that up, because both of those things, Harold's death and them having to leave on foot without taking anything, fell totally flat in the TV show. I remember them being fairly poignant when I read the book, but I think that's again because you get the internal monologue. In the show, them leaving on foot feels important until they get to the next town and load up on supplies, and you're like, well, what was that for? Right? It just felt like it didn't make any sense. Like it was like
it's this long journey, and then it's very easy for them with their Patagonia vests.
Yeah.
Well, and also in the book, not to be that guy, but in the book, it's like, it is so insane to say you leave right now with only what's on you, go, and you walk. And it's like, there is kind of a crisis of confidence where it's like, look, we know she's magical in our dreams and all that, but like, how much do we believe all this? Also, one of you will not make it. Okay, no, but seriously, how do we feel about all this? None of that all that tension.
Yeah, it didn't really play for me. And then the same thing with why am I blanking on his name? The guy who died with all the candy bars.
Jesus.
Harold.
The same thing with Harold's death.
Reverse
Jesus. It just felt kind of, it didn't feel pointless that Nadine killed him or left him to die or whatever. That still played. But going back to him while he's like writing out his goodbye just felt like, well, I don't really need this. I'm not sure what this is contributing to the story.
And plus also, talk about out of order. Wouldn't it have changed virtually nothing for him to be laying there and for us to have spent, I don't know, 7 whole minutes wondering whatever happened to Harold, and then have them find his corpse, and then maybe pick up this piece of paper that he had written his story on and then give it. But instead to show us him being like, oh my God, I have to sit here and eat this product placement payday. Oh,
really uncomfortable with this stick in my shoulder.
Oh, perhaps
tasty.
I'll write my story.
Keep you alive long enough to relieve your last words.
Call
Delicious.
Me Hawk. I mean, it was
just the pacing is just all over. It's all over, you know.
A kind of subtle thing that I do want to tip my hat to, that as best I remember was not in the book, is the discomfort of the word Caesar. Like they sort of painted it, you know, where what's his name, the professor is like, you know, render unto Caesar, but it's like, I rather liked up until that moment how subtle they played it, that he kept covering up the word Caesar and was seem to be uncomfortable with it. Although truthfully, I think it's just basically the same reason they covered up the word Paris is because they didn't have the rights to whatever imagery or what have you. But I don't know. I rather dug it. I would have liked it. I would have believed that this version of Las Vegas with run by the Dark Man would not have a 1984 just repeating, "You are the same all singing crap of the universe." Like I would have liked to have believed he'd be showing us like some awesome Starsky and Hutch episodes or something on the screens at all times. But again, they only got 9 episodes. They got a lot of ground to cover.
And that's not a choice you can say like they had to make. That's an interesting choice they could have made. And I'll be honest, some of the bits with them walking on the road, like we said, I would have liked more. I was like, okay, this is cool. This feels mystical. This feels like an adventure. It feels Lord of the Rings, like you said, Bryce. So I was halfway there in this episode. It just kept taking me out of it with a couple of the choices here and there.
Yeah, but I am glad, and I'm assuming that this is more akin to the major beats of the book, but I'm very glad that the end of this episode was the three who could still walk getting kidnapped and just being taken to New Vegas, and Lassie will solve everything with James Marsden, and we're going to keep moving forward, because there's a world where I think you could have done this story in two or three seasons.
Such a bummer. It's such a bummer, Bryce, because that was the best part of the book. I'm sorry, I'm just going to full on spoil the book. The best part of the book is that you spend chapters and chapters and chapters believing that per the prophecy, Stu was the one who did not make it. And they just let him be dead. Let him be dead. And it's like they were sad. They went on to Vegas. They start having their action adventure over there. And then like 7 chapters later, it's like Stu was very hot in the sun, and he heard a scuffling, and he heard a growl. Oh, is it a wolf? No, it's Kojak. And you're like, oh my God, what if it was a good thing to be the one who didn't make it? It's such, they ruined it. They ruined that part. They ruined that part of the book. It was one of the best parts.
But it's James Marsden. You can't not have James Marsden in every episode. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, he would have been in this episode falling down into the bottom of the ravine, right? Like, I guess he might not have been in the next episode, but
I'm glad I appreciate my forecast on this is, assuming that they tell the full story in these episodes, is I will walk away from this season knowing broadly The Stand instead of seeing the first half or the first third of it and maybe not coming back to it if it were slower.
Yeah.
I think that is
a trade-off. Yeah,
the pragmatism I have to bring to this is it sounds like there's a lot of really cool story that would be way longer in this style. I mean, it would still be this show, just
way longer,
atmospheric, and
1,284 pages long, or 48, I forget.
About 9.
What does it say that I've already started looking at the WandaVision page?
Okay, all right. I think it says everything that we need.
All right, that is The Stand, episode 7 of season 1. Let's talk about WandaVision, episode 4 of season 1. We Interrupt This Program is the name of the episode because we interrupted the programs. We didn't get a new television homage. We kind of rewound, starting with what I thought was a really interesting perspective of what it was like when everyone was brought back at the end of Endgame outside of the events of Endgame. If you were in the middle of a hospital, for instance, that lets us know that Monica Rambeau came back 3 weeks before the events of WandaVision. We got to see the whole story of the FBI showing up and the missing people and the denial and the setting up of all of the equipment outside. And we learned who the beekeeper was in the sewers and how the radio broadcast and basically caught us up to speed on all of the mysteries of the first 3 episodes from the perspective of the people outside of the town Wanda is controlling.
And you would think that in general, as somebody who has on the record said that questions are better than answers, that I would be dissatisfied. was super satisfied. Just answer. Now that you have all the answers, isn't that an interesting puzzle? And I'm like, yeah, you handed me all these answers.
You've described questions.
How do they go together?
I want to be very clear here. These are not answers. These are questions. We finally know the questions.
No. I mean, they were flat answers. She's not in a tube. She's not held prisoner. She's locked. She is the architect of her own, like whatever psychic crisis Wanda's going through has projected around the city. She's living out these various phases of her age-appropriate fantasies or whatever. And you would think if
the show about Wanda, the show named after Wanda turns out to be the one running it. I mean, okay, I guess we found that setup, but how and why? Those are questions.
I think what we're dancing around here is we got a lot of answers, but not to the most important questions. We got a lot of answers, but not all of the answers. And we got a lot of answers that just bring up more questions.
Yes. Now, here's the part that really surprises me. If you told me there would be a show, like imagine I had just watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and you said in the future there'll be another Marvel TV show and they will so on the nose have a moment where a bunch of agents of, say, a competing agency to S.H.I.E.L.D. are standing around a whiteboard and they literally write down all of the questions that the home viewer probably are having. Questions like, why hexagons? Why different time periods? Commercial breaks? Question mark.
I love all those answers.
In my own mind, as I pitch this and say this out loud, it sounds like the worst idea ever. Oh, is Vision alive? Question mark is on the whiteboard. And yeah,
it's the kind of
I loved it. I loved every second of it. I loved everything about
because
this.
it fit in the universe, right? Like these questions are the questions we have, but you would also expect them to be the questions they have. And it reemphasized that, no, we don't know the answers to that. Yeah, we know why the helicopter showed up. But we don't know why it was colored when the rest of the thing was black and white. Yeah, we know that the beekeeper, who he was a guy going through the tunnel, but we don't know why he shows up as a beekeeper. We don't know why his cord ends up becoming a jump rope.
The beekeeper thing I felt like was actually a pretty good approximation of that Stephen King trick where it's just like, it's implied that like whatever he was, it couldn't be perceived or interpreted that way. Yeah.
I mean, that just brings up the question of, but why?
Yeah,
why is that? Why is that the way this world works? Why is Wanda doing this? Is it Wanda? Is she being manipulated? Is she doing it voluntarily? Is she being tricked into doing it? Like, we don't know any of the bigger questions, but I thought it was genius of them to string us along for 3 episodes of like, all you've got is questions. We don't know really what's happening. We get a tiny little thing with Monica Rambeau showing up and then be like, here's all of what was happening at the same time, but you still don't know why. You still don't know the most important questions. That was genius because I felt satisfied like you did, Brian, of like, oh my God, this is great. We're seeing all the things from the outside and here's what's going on. But you still don't know the most important reasons of why this is happening, which is why we've got 5 episodes left. And I'm guessing we're going to get 3 more television episodes with more clues. And then we'll get another, like, let's see what happens, what happened outside. And then a final 5th episode of everything.
Bryce may disagree with this, but I thought I thought that for the most part, Lost did a pretty good job of doing the 2 new questions for every 1 answer. And this is a faster, more 2020s version of that in a way that aughts, serialized, what was it, 26 episodes per season on Lost or whatever, like that insane, like that glacial pace just couldn't do. But instead, they're essentially doing a faster version of what most of us liked about Lost in the week over week experience. What you're experiencing is a holodeck version of the Sherlock Holmes mystery that we lived. I got 4 more metaphors where those are coming from.
I guess so, but also, this is a mystery puzzle show, whatever, in 2021. This is just how you write, expository stories. At some point, even if they don't explicitly say, we're in the sewer and we need to find out where the tunnel goes. At some point, someone got to say, I hope we find, like, it just ends up being in this one that they have a whiteboard and they write, why is vision? They have to make textual all of the things that are contextual in the first 3 episodes.
This is a simile and not a metaphor, but it's as though, or it's like
actually.
It's like we just watched somebody dunk, and I turned to Tom and we leaned over to Bryce and said, we saw dunking for the first time and lost. And Bryce, annoyed, says, yeah, you dunk now. That's how basketball's played.
They do a lot. You get hundreds of points in a game now.
You got to do some dunking, man.
Yeah, but back in the 80s, people didn't dunk a lot.
I remember one time a glass broke.
You remember Wikipedia?
Yeah, they almost outlawed dunking back then.
Dr. J wasn't even a real doctor.
He had no medical degrees at all. So I love this episode. I had that smile that Marvel Cinematic Universe sometimes gives me, where things just start coming together and you're like, oh, here we go. Oh, that's where Randall Park comes in. Oh, I got really excited when Darcy Lewis showed up. I just loved it. It was like, oh yeah, no, now show me all the things I've been wondering about and let me see which ones match up with what I thought and which ones I didn't. But I want to go back to that opening scenario because, man, that blew me away. I don't know if you guys...
No, 100%. As a matter of fact, I wanted to share that there was something about the particle effects of, you saw the ashes kind of come together to create the person. And I forget which one of my family said it, but they were like, oh man, do they love that particle effect where a thing becomes a thing. And then, I kid you not, Josie was midway through saying, yeah, it's almost like the way when after the snap, everyone, and then just cut off. And she goes, oh, it was awesome. It was an awesome magical moment. And I feel like all of us had our own version of that when we realized like, oh my God, you're doing that. You're doing the thing.
On.
Yeah. That was so great. And had they mentioned in the movies that it wasn't called the snap for most people, that it was called the blip?
The blip, yeah.
I had forgotten that, but it was
that was in the Spider-Man movie.
Right.
To explain
Spider-Man
like
Far From
the
Home.
age discrepancy and all that stuff. Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, and just showing that side of the chaos, I thought was great. I really enjoyed that, and it was motivated. It was showing us how Monica Rambeau arrived. It's not telling us why her mom is dead. I mean, they said that she died from cancer, but it's like, well, okay, but what? I don't know. I feel like there's more to it than that, is what I'm saying. I'm not sure. I trust.
Sorry, is her mom
director
significant in the comic books in a way that I don't know?
Was in Captain Marvel. She was Captain Marvel's friend.
She was a fighter. She was a pilot
in the movie.
Got it. I know. When I was reading comics, I
forget the comics. I don't know anything about the comics. I'm just going on the movies.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
She okay.
Right. She's Captain Marvel's best friend.
Yeah.
We haven't had all the Captain Marvel movies yet.
Yeah.
She was the director of Sword.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
Feels like you'd want her around, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I think there's more to it than that. Anyway, that's a side
bold take.
Side play. Thanks. I feel like Marvel might not be telling us everything.
They might be setting something
more.
up.
Listen up, true believers. Excelsior.
Did you see the cape flying in the background of this episode?
Yeah. Looking forward to next week. They gave us that mid-season trailer, and the only part of it that I felt was in any way really not spoilery. Trailers are never spoilery for real, because they never really give you the context. But you see Vision see the hexagons in the trailer. So
speaking of which, that brief kind of fraying at the edges in this
that's
episode.
Where I'm going. Is Vision actually imaginary, or is he reanimated?
Well,
like, is she propping up his corpse, and that's why we briefly see the Vision.
Oh, his caved-in head. Yeah,
caved-in head.
So here's what I would imagine, and this is me metagaming, because things we know is just like we just got a bunch of answers, and we don't know how narratively they all fit together. One of the things that we know on the meta level is that they very loudly keep reminding us that this has something to do with the multiverse of madness or whatever. So what I suspect we are, number one, we know that this is a prison of her own making, that this is some kind of coping mechanism, that Wanda had some kind of break with reality that is affecting,
we don't know that. We suspect that.
It's okay. It's that is the current spelled out operating theory at this point in the story.
Mm-hmm. But there's also so many clues about Agatha Harkness and Mephisto and all this other stuff that there's very clear indications to the viewer that there might be more going on than that.
Okay. No normal people. Yes, weirdos who know any of those names you just said would.
Or someone who read an article on Variety this morning.
Okay.
Say.
What's happening with Mephisto?
Right. I'm with you, Bryce. I'm a normal person. I don't know that Mephisto is a demigod who's primarily
I don't know the nerd stuff. I watch
Fantastic Four. I didn't read all of the comics.
But you do know that there's something up with Catherine Hahn that's different than the other villagers.
Swear to God, if you make up more names, Tom, this is your classic move.
No, that's
just making up words.
Hanging, you're saying there's a Randall Park in the episode.
Yes.
I'm just a small town viewer. I don't know these fancy words.
That's okay, but anyway, that's it.
I'm sorry. I
got nothing. It's fine.
I totally derailed you from your point, which was going with, we think Wanda's doing this as a coping mechanism.
Correct. But because we know on a metagame level that this has something to do with multiverses, I allow for the possibility, just as we were able to go steal Infinity Stones from alternate timelines, in quote unquote our endgame story, then there's no reason that there can't be an Infinity Stone in an alternate timeline or multiverse or whatever, where we get quote unquote
the yellow stone.
Correct. Yeah. Quote unquote our vision back.
Right.
Like our vision still. Maybe that's why she created this bubble in this reality, is to keep him alive long enough to get an Infinity Stone
to go and get that.
Else.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I see. All right. Anything else on WandaVision?
No, I'm just really glad that I locked in my prediction, because I like it when I turn out to be right.
I wonder what they're going to do with the kids. I think I mentioned it was only an after talk last week, but her kids, her twins become young Avengers.
I don't know, man. I'm just a normal viewer.
Anyway. You can't play both sides of this. Don't go all Reed Richards on me. I don't even know what that reference means.
I'm just very interested.
Who is that? Is that the Netflix guy?
Because I think that there's I think there's some dark stuff that happens with those kids.
There is.
Wonder what they're going to do with that stuff.
So you'd have to read a Variety article to understand.
Is that football? Football.com?
Yeah, exactly. Go do it. Play it. Love it. That's WandaVision, episode 4 of season 1. Let us move on to A Man Who Eats People. Hannibal, episode 10, season 1. The episode is called Buffet Froid. Beth LeBeau is found murdered, drowned in her own blood as a result of her face being cut into what is called in this IMDb description a Glasgow smile. And really most of the episode is Graham losing time and dealing with his own descent into mental instability, and starting to rely on Hannibal to ground him.
There's lots to break apart. The visuals, I think, are maybe the most haunting that we've seen so far. I like that.
Well, because we've got the girl under the bed who looks like a corpse because she can't recognize faces and isn't sure she's alive. You've got the doctor.
You have the corpses that have their jaws split.
Yeah.
So they look like Venom.
The original Beth murder, and then the doctor getting his Glasgow smile on.
Yeah. But most of it, like last week we talked about, that was a transformative episode because we had this Mexican standoff where everyone admitted, like, this person killed that person, and now you know that this person killed that person, but you killed that person, and all of us know that all of us has killed someone, and we all have to keep it secret. And then they just broke not just a character, but our main character. Like, I've seen a number of shows that begin with an unreliable narrator. Mr. Robot did that, Fight Club did that, and so on. But I can't think of too many that get 10 episodes into its first season of what looks like it's pretending to be a police procedural, and then just full on break the main character so that we can't trust anything he says or does. And we already had a wild card that we don't trust anything he says. Like, I don't know what to believe. They broke.
Well, here's what's fun
the
about
show,
that.
kind of.
They built up that Graham was unreliable. This isn't new. This
Correct.
shouldn't be a shock. But there was a part of my brain, and I think yours too, that was like, yeah, but it's Graham. I mean, it'll stop at some point, right? It won't go
figure
too
it
far.
out.
Yeah. And so it wasn't so much that they broke him. It's that you saw him sliding and you're like, yeah, no. So now he's going to stop. I guess he's not going to stop. Oh no, he's totally
You watch them
he's
openly
losing
conspire.
It. Yeah, he's
openly
gone.
conspire to keep it from him. Yeah.
Well,
And that gave them permission for Hannibal to then avowedly manipulate him, right?
Well,
there's no more of this like cloak and dagger. He basically tells the neurologist, like, man, don't you want to be famous? Lie to him. And then we immediately see the neurologist like, yeah, nothing wrong. Look at your scan. It's all good. And then we see the doctor dead and we think, oh, well, it's probably Beth. You know, she followed him there. That makes sense.
Or a dream.
And then they show us, no, you idiot, Tom. It's not Beth. It's Hannibal. And he did this because he couldn't trust that doctor not to break and reveal this. And he needs Will to believe that there really is nothing physically wrong with him.
Well, if you at episodes 1 through 7 told me like we began to start to see, oh my God, like we're seeing Hannibal get a protege and all that stuff or whatever. This episode did a world-bending twist where it's like, I mean, nobody confirm it in the chat if I happen to be right when I say this, but I had the thought like, oh my God, I think Will is the protege. I think he's gonna be manipulated into becoming the instrument of Hannibal.
Like, what if Luke had said yes?
Yeah,
to Darth
right?
Vader, right?
I mean, because his brain was expanding and bleeding and crazy. And it
he
was
didn't think it was.
Like, right?
He's like, no, well, there's nothing wrong with my brain. It can't be expanding. It must just be me.
And meanwhile, Dr. Vader is assuring me everything's great. So I guess this must be the good use of the Force.
It's just my own mental state. And I just need to do a few things to reassert control.
Yeah, I'm not normally a fan of world-breaking twists, but this was so tiny. It felt a bit like I don't know, like just a sidekick to the orbit of a planet that doesn't seem like much at the time, but then you realize like it's just going to make a bigger and bigger difference on everything.
Yeah. I imagined it as, we think world breaking. We think we've got the world and then we just crack it. Right. And this was world breaking in like, well, we knew it was bending. We knew it was bending, but they're going to stop. And then suddenly it's like, oh, it broke. Like,
yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
I think that's, I'm out of thoughts outside of to say, really shook. Like I was just shook after watching that. What did you guys think?
I also really liked kind of the come to Jesus moment between Will and Lawrence Fishburne. I thought that was, especially after last week where they are very much at odds because of Hannibal's, constant poking in that direction, that they could kind of be on the level with each other and say, hey, I am responsible for you and I'm responsible for the things that I let you do. And it may not seem like it, but I don't want you to end up like a girl from Veep. I don't want you, I'm responsible for you because I did with you pretty much what I did with her. And now there are pieces of her all over New England.
I rather like that Will's response was, me broken is better than your best normal person.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, can't argue with that. It's like, and if what you want is fewer dead people, then how about you use broken me, just keep on going. And it's like, well, I can't argue.
But it's, that's, and then
and he helped the woman with the whatchamacallit syndrome.
Oh,
right?
yeah, the one
like
where she
you
thinks
still
she's
could
dead.
see the Will Graham that is helpful, that reached out and said, you're alive, and got her attention and had her follow him, not to kill the neurologist, but because she was intrigued to find out, like, wait, am I not dead? This guy seems to know something, like he's still got usefulness. He's still got talent.
They did a good enough job of planting the seeds of, and I forget what they said, but it was just enough that it was not a surprise when not only did she think she was dead, but she was also face blind. And like they laid that out in front of us, and like a good magic trick, when it snapped together, I had no questions about why am I seeing this way. Oh, that's right. They said something about face blindness being associated with this experience, and it was I loved it. It was great.
I don't know if they were explicit about it, but I mean, because obviously Hannibal does both of the murders in this episode. I think that's
no. I don't think he does the Beth LeBeau one. Is the girl?
Oh, you think that he only did the follow up? Oh,
yeah. I think he needed the follow. I think he needed to dispose of. I think we know that Hannibal's very good at copycats. I think that there was a murderer on the loose. I think he knew that he needed to get rid of this guy.
Okay.
And knew that this would fit the MO and everything, and so he.
Okay, but then that answers my next question.
Halfway through it, and she was there, and he was like, "Well, this is much easier. Here you go. Yeah. You just finish this."
Okay, that answers my second question, which was that it would have needed to seem like he knew the murderer girl at any point before this episode, which wouldn't have made any sense. But
he's just sliding in and taking advantage of an existing situation.
Yeah, that's tricky. He's a tricky one. Yeah. He's a tricky one, Hannibal Lecter. He's a tricky one.
Sure is. Yeah.
What do you guys think? Does Will? I mean, actually, I don't want to ask. I don't want to ask.
Does Will get better?
No. Does he end up being the instrument of Hannibal? Like, does he become our Hannibal? Like, how broken does he get?
I think for a time, yes.
Really?
And then I think Will's smart enough to realize what's going on, and that's our end game.
But he literally has a brain disease. Like, his brain is swollen and broken.
And makes him pliable.
He'll last long enough.
I think he gets manipulated into doing one kill, into doing one kind of nasty kill.
Yeah.
And then Hannibal copies that, and then I bet that's how they get him.
Oh, you think he gets framed for Hannibal's serial killings?
At least for one. I mean, if we're seeing Hannibal copy investigations that Will is really close to, I don't see why
Hannibal's like building a brand for Will the serial killer. He's like the Brian Brushwood of brand building serial killing.
Serial Willer.
My metaphor level is not high enough.
Sorry, I looked over at the literal house of cereal.
He's looking
boxes
at 80 boxes of cereal. Actually,
that's cereal's on my mind.
But I bet he's setting him up to frame him for something nasty. I bet.
Well, and we are 1, 2, 3 more episodes left in the season. So given this is a broadcast show, we can expect it to build to a season finale.
I mean, just if we could take a moment and a deep breath to appreciate prime time, first season, episode 10. Would you, up against NCIS, would you have ever believed this kind of thing would just come out of the gate swinging as hard as it did? That's amazing.
Nope. I think that's why people loved this so much when it was out, because we're sort of used to, we talked about this before, we're sort of used to this kind of show showing up from an HBO Max, Netflix, Hulu original, etc. But this was broadcast television.
Somehow we got a rainbow out of the beige machine. God, I love metaphors. Just constantly, always.
I mean,
but they're the rainbow.
Metaphors are like a springtime rain.
They sure are, Tom. They sure are.
It's like a thing that is kind of like another thing.
It's real.
Yeah.
It's as good as it's going to get.
Yes. That is Hannibal, season 1, episode 10. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. Next time, we will be doing all of this all over again. The Stand 108, WandaVision 105, and Hannibal 111. Thank you for supporting us, patreon.com/Cordkillers. And until next week, we will spoil you soon.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.